Hello, everybody. Welcome back into our little cinema here in an imaginative Galway or an imaginative Ireland. I'm super happy to introduce two great people of the film. Is the director, Faraz Sharia, and the actress, Banafshe Hourmazdi. Please welcome the two of them. I'm the only audience, so for the moment, but there will be many people watching. So where does this find you right now?
I'm in my office right now. Just finished the day, and it's actually, I think, quite a good time because it's only 3 days left till I leave for vacation. So
Nice.
I'm at a very good point now.
Absolutely. And you, Banafshe?
Actually, I just ran home from boxing, and I'm in a queer feminist box club in Berlin, and it's the first time I went to boxing after the lockdown, and it's different than before, but I think everybody was smiling now in the workout. Everybody was like, "So good to see you! Yes, it's so good." Yeah.
Picking up life again, because in a way, when your film was screened in Berlin in February, it was supposed to be released, I think, in May in the German theaters. So was there anything after Berlin, really, or because more or less the lockdown came on March, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing really.
Nothing really. I mean, like in terms of the film, I mean, screening.
No, of course. I mean, there's like I think there were several award ceremonies like that took place online in the German award circuit. But then festival wise, I think we were about to leave a week after Berlinale for Rose Filmtage in the Netherlands, and that was cancelled on the day. So yeah, I think it's so far it's just some online meditation, waiting for better things to come. And but yeah, it's actually the first proper online Q&A we're having, I think.
Oh, nice. I hope it will be proper. So, in the film, we see right at the beginning, some home style video material, which gives us a very authentic and personal feeling to the film. Can you tell us a little bit more what kind of material this is and what does it mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, one part which is maybe more like the obvious thing is that it's documentary footage from my own childhood. It's my father who shot a lot of footage in the 90s, just about like 2-3 years after their arrival in Germany. And he handed me like I think 40 hours of footage when I was 18 or 19 over, and I had a really intense look at all these images and his gaze on Germany, on arriving in a country that he is to call home now. And I think that's like where it comes from personally. But then again, it's also, I think, in a way, an image of making history, or maybe like trying to format a history that is most of the time not so visible in the like normative German gaze or understanding of the past. And yeah, and it's something that we came across quite a lot, that people living in the second or third generation in Germany have these like 90s VCR images from their childhood. And I think we wanted to start with this and then continue to tell a new story or an updated version of this in the same format.
Right. There's it's wonderful because there is a really nice quote from a German philosopher, Ernst Bloch, who does a definition of Heimat, and he says Heimat must be seen as something that shines into our childhood, but in which nobody has yet been. So I think that really kind of gives a good feeling for your film. refer to that as well? Would you call your film a Heimat film, or what would you say?
It's quite funny that you say that, because I think in a very early stage, when we were pitching the project to funding institutions here in Germany, we sometimes thought about the idea of calling this a Heimat film with an obvious rebellious progressive approach to what a Heimat film is. And but then we also thought that I think many of us, and by us I mean the people who worked on this film, have a very ambivalent relationship to the term Heimat, because it is so highly politically charged and not so inclusive in many ways that we have experienced Germany as our home to be. And I think it's a very delicate construct to operate with, especially because it's so exclusive and it has such a racialized definition of who gets to call a place like Germany their Heimat.
Can I add something?
Yes.
I would like to answer your quote with another German sociologist, Joanna Pawczaneka. She wrote an essay about belonging in the mobile world. That's how I would translate her essay. And she says, Heimat is the place that you can criticize. And I actually like this definition more, because for me, speaking about Germany, it's like, it's not the place that I can criticize in a public sphere without getting punished. And I know that. And I think like also this is something, I guess, Faraz, you also experienced with trying to get funding for the film, because there's, for us, there's like limitations and rules and how far we can go and criticize a certain image that is created of Germany in films or television. And I think taking this definition actually gives you more power, because by criticizing something, you say, I am part of this society and I want to criticize it. And it gives you more like an agency in a way, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. There are moments in the film where the people address directly the audience in a way. They look into the camera, and which is quite unusual. Why did you choose this method? Or
I think it comes from it comes from a point where we thought of this film as a representation of something, and that something can be a migrated body, or a person like Parvis, or a character like Bana, who we love and understand and feel with, but then again also a representation of a political status quo in terms of what we experience in European cinema or in pop culture or in general like media representation of narratives around refugees. And I think we really tried to make this film an experience of reclaiming the gaze, in terms of creating our own stories from us for us. And I think to flag that in the film by directly addressing the audience through a camera. I don't know how you say that in English, but like staring into the camera directly, you somehow also open up a conversation with the audience where they also get agency to participate, I think. And it's in that scene where Parvis is translating for a refugee who's about to be deported, and that scene starts with each character looking right into the camera and addressing the audience. And we wanted to like somehow say, yo, this is also somehow your responsibility, or you can take action and you can also be part of what is happening here. And then I think there's a second idea behind it, which is that we really wanted to somehow irritate the situation of watching something, or this position of an audience who's like secretly in the dark looking at something and be like somehow impressed or involved or whatever, but rather make the audience visible as such. And I think that's something that was really important for us to express.
Right. It is also like when you have a look at the classical migration films, like the French comedies, Monsieur Claude, which is in the Anglophone world, Serial Bad Weddings. So our audience knows which kind of films we're talking about, who work with stereotypes, who have just like one-dimensional characters. Was that for you a challenge, or how much of a challenge was it to create your film to break these stereotypes? Did you have to rather deconstruct the conventional stereotypes or order to make those films are made, or did you try to make an alternative draft of your film with your film? Do you know what I mean?
You think, Bana? Yeah, I know I do.
I just, to be honest, I think it's really funny that you're bringing these films up, because I think they're addressing a totally different group of people. And so like, for me, this film, like Monsieur Claude films, are not even a reference for me to our film, because they're so made for the white gaze that I don't even like, I don't know where to start with comparing our film to them. And I think it's, I would say that the whole idea of making our film was that we don't want to have people talking about something they have read something about in a book or a magazine, or felt like, oh, this was interesting, I want to make a film about it. I'm not saying that this is like a bad thing to do, but that was definitely not our approach with the film. So I think that's why it's really, maybe I should be flattered to be compared to like this really successful French films.
I didn't want to compare it. I just wanted to show like the conventional way people work with stereotypes, because it's most of the comedies work on one-dimensional stereotypes, and
I do understand what that aspect of not being able to deny that these narratives dominate what we think of when we think of a drama or a comedy, or like just some random film tackling migration, or and I think because we all, like many of us who worked on this film, know each other from cultural studies course at university, so we are somehow like DIY filmmakers, not so much the actors, but more like the production company and so on. And I think for us there was always this idea of, okay, why do these narratives dominate the German filmscape? And it's obviously about like structural discrimination, racism, sexism, and all these isms who like bring up very little, like that do not really help a lot of young filmmakers to do what they are best at. But then again, I think it's also that, I mean, at least for me writing the script, I did have a lot of internalized ideas of how these characters behave, or what these characters think or do, or what the conflicts should be. And I think that's the reason why there were 12 drafts of the script. I think we had a writing process of almost 2.5 years. And that was also like 2.5 years of questioning your own internalized narratives. And I think, yes, it does come a lot from we do seek a lot of inspiration from our own experience, but it's also a lot of work to deconstruct and dismantle these internalized stereotypes of migration, or female characters, or and so on. The list is endless, I think.
Yeah, talking about that in a way, Banafshe, your character carries the same name in the film. How much Banafshe is in Banafshe, or in other words, like how do you see acting as a tool, also in order to deconstruct roles, or how do you approach a role?
I think it's a really interesting question, because like I got approached with this role, and it had this name already when they approached me. And my agent was really eager to change the name of the role, because she said all the white German people are going to think you're going to not be acting, but be playing yourself. And it just happens because I'm a woman of color, and that's, people think like, what is she talking about? She's just being her random self in this film. And I think this wouldn't have happened to me if I was a white woman, and my agent wouldn't have said that. And I thought about changing that, and then I thought like, fuck this, I'm not going to limit myself because of like white people. Just as simple as that. And like working on this role, it's hard because I'm trying to represent something where there's, like, as Farah said, there's so many ideas and narratives we have around people who are refugees, people who have like an uncertain status, if they can stay or not. And like, I also felt sometimes myself, is it like, am I like overstepping? Am I like portraying something that, am I allowed to tell this story? And then I thought, yes, because like, what would be the other option? Should only like a woman who came to Germany 4 years ago would be allowed to play that role? But then people would also still say she's playing herself. And I'm not playing reality. I'm part in a fictional film that has really like utopian moments in it. Like, it's not that easy to go underground in Germany. And I just try to be like the most humble in a way towards this thing. But I'm really interested to hear if it worked in that way, that people feel like it's not overstepping. And I'm really like interested in having this discussion, because I feel like we are in a part where a lot of people don't have access to the industry. And like, for example, trans actors, they don't have access, but there's like cis people playing trans roles. And why is that, you know? And can they only be there if they're playing a trans role? You know, like I have these questions. I don't have answers. I have a question for you, Kathrin. How does this work?
No, but I think it's better to have questions than always answers, you know, because sometimes the questions are the answers. But maybe for your question, I have another somebody else who said something super smart, who is smarter than me. Alexander Leon. He has a really great quote, which says, "Queer people don't grow up as themselves. We grow up playing a version of ourselves that sacrifices authenticity to minimize humiliation and prejudice. The massive task of our adult lives is to unpick which parts of ourselves are truly us and which parts we've created to protect us." And I think you can change the word queer into people of color or other
Yeah.
Being I think there's a lot in that quote that resonates to sentiments that are also in the film, definitely. Because what I'm just thinking about right now is that we often talk of the characters as characters who get the opportunity to be many versions of themselves, not just one. And we did that by trying to create juxtapositions between the like performances within different scenes. In one scene there might be super shy and moderate, and then another one they're very loud and outgoing. And I think that really is an approach, I think, that wants to reflect on this like flexibility, or maybe call it fluidity, to navigate a life where you have multiple versions of yourself. And you develop these because obviously the society who constantly demands you to express who you are because you look different, or you behave different, or you love a different whatever. I mean, there's so many ways to access difference. And I think that's something that was really important for every character in that film, and especially like in a sequence where it's in the just after this walk, the hike, where you see like several possibilities of what could have happened in the film, or what will happen in the film, or what did happen in the film but we didn't see it. And I think that's like a really big drive for this work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And can I also add something? I think it's really important that I didn't approach the character like I'm going to play a refugee, you know? That was a part of the identity, but it was not like, okay, how am I going to be like eating like a refugee, sleeping like a refugee, partying like a refugee? And I think this is like the really big mistake in German film. Normally, I would say that being a refugee is like that's like the problem for the character, and that's what they're playing 90 minutes. And I think that our approach was different to that, and that maybe gave it a little bit more humanity to the
it's
character,
so true.
I hope.
Yeah, I mean, what you say, Bana, is also so. I remember that this was like on a very early stage of rehearsing with Oydin, who played the role of Amon. That like because Oydin is not queer; he is a hetero guy, and it's something.
Let's out him.
Oh God, this is horrible.
He's getting back into the closet.
Oh God. No, I think, but I mean, for the queer audience, I think it's good to flag that, because I want to be honest, and I think in this, like, it's such a it's so obvious, but it's often done that you like use these identity marks as the key source for a character and for their emotion or for their feelings, or like how you say, like how they the haptic, or like how like the embodiment of them. And it's so true what you say, because you I hate it when you see films and the gay character is obviously only characterized by being gay, and that's I think it's just like something very important to have in mind.
Yeah, maybe you should like leave the philosophical, although I love that a lot, area, but I think we will drift back there again. I think the costume design also is excellent in the film. How much would you say fashion does influence your work? Both of you, because Banafshe, you said you today you for the Q&A you put out the shiny clothes and.
I'm also interested more in your answer, Bana, than in mine. I mean, also regarding to the film, like, I mean, we did have a lot of discussions about the costume design of Bana also, and of like other characters, and I think it's a really interesting question.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, it was so like, I think I had like in general maybe like 10 hours of like dress rehearsal, or felt like endless. And it was so much clothing that I would never wear in my life, and it was so much of it, and I felt so bad. But then I accepted it because I didn't want to play myself. I realized that. And I think what I really like about the costume of my character is that she really like doesn't give a shit about how she's supposed to look and what like her appearance makes, like what impression she makes. And I wish I would have that more as a person, but I don't.
But that's so, I mean, it's so funny, because it's also, I think, a lot about perception, because in my perspective, I'm like, damn, that girl is on fire every minute. It doesn't matter where she is, she looks fine. And it's like, it's I mean, I know that what you were saying was probably more towards, she doesn't care that she's in a village and they're just like really boring white people who don't really understand where she's going to with her dresses. But I think what there's a really important aspect to the costume design, which is that this is not documentary, and you said that already, but it's fiction, and and we use fiction to create images that resonate with our audience and somehow also empower and open up a way, or an option for something else than what we are used to see. And I think costume design is such a subtle but also direct way to address these drive, like these impulses. And we obviously, I mean, it's so much, we seek so much inspiration from music videos, from Rihanna to Solange to the 90s to whatsoever. And I think it was for us really important to say, okay, yes, she will probably be addressed as a refugee in many people's retellings of the film, but she will look much different than what a refugee gets to look like in many films we see in Europe. And I think to have these, like, to create these memories in our audience of that character looking fierce or looking just different than, and it's also about, like, it's I think it's also about being sensitive in a way for a queer audience also, because fashion as a way of expressing yourself or like experimenting with yourself will always be a huge part of who I am, and I think of many other queer people as well. And it's just like some candies we serve for our audience.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I mean, fashion or clothes, it's codes also, and but on the other hand, it's disguise as well. So it has its own language in that way.
Yes.
Yeah. In Germany, when there was this so-called refugee crisis, a lot of people started donating their clothes. Also, like white people felt like now it's the time to give back, and a lot of shelters then started saying, please don't bring us your shitty clothes because nobody's gonna wear them, you know. So the shelters were like buried in like tons of white people's like esprit as Oliver bullshit, and nobody wanted that shit, you know. And I think that's really I think we set like a good counterpoint to that. Yeah.
Maybe let's maybe.
Sorry for so much hate on white people.
maybe we can say, or hopefully their idea was more like share their code or whatever. I don't put it in that way, or we see. Okay, so I'm sorry that we are almost coming to an end, though. It's a huge topic and so lovely to talk to you about it, and it feels like we are just warming up, and would be lovely to continue. Maybe for the end, you can just tell us a little about how will the journey of your film go on? How will your journeys continue? Will you be working together again?
I mean, it's, I think, for certain for us that we are constantly exchanging ideas and what we are working on and trying to keep everyone in the loop. And we also, I think, in a way, understand each other's as, I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but I think as allies who try to establish within the industry together. And I think that can be in many ways, but I think it's for certain that we will, especially in a country like here in Germany, where there's so few non-white creatives in the establishment of the film industry. I think it's super important to push each other together, and then, like, talking like specifically about this film, I think everything is still ahead of us. We're just starting, and it's so weird to be talking about this film for so long now, but not really like hearing other people talking about it, because it's not been I mean, the cinema release was set for May, and it's coming out now in September, so that's ahead of us. And some other festivals will show. I mean, all these online festival things start now, and I think it's gonna be exciting for all of us, but the traveling is unfortunately cancelled for now.
And you, Banafshe, you also make cool videos, like 50 things only German.
Shades of Grey. Yeah, that's me. I'm the 50
That's
Shades
you.
of Grey. I'm working on new things, or like I'm started working again now after like the lockdown has eased in Germany, and I'm really happy to start a actual conversation about the film, because I really want to talk with more people about it, and I hope that like people from different communities see it, and that we are going to have more exchange around these topics, because I think this film is just the starting point from where we can tell different stories, you know. I'm hoping for that. Yeah,
but I'm sure with people working in the industry like you, I think it's only for the better. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you
for bringing your film here, and for being here and answering questions and giving insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Ireland.
Bye, Ireland.